Hi, New Catholic Generation, and welcome to our third episode of the Synod series. Today, I have a special guest. We are going to be talking with Connor McLaughlin from the channel Rise Up Jerusalem. Connor, can you go ahead and tell us a bit about your channel?
So Rise Up Jerusalem is a channel I started 3 years ago, basically to encourage my peers to, as I like to say, rise up and live. So like to stop being a boring Catholic that just goes to church and like actually be a hardcore Catholic, or spiritually swole, as I like to say. I do t-shirt reviews, I do talks about mostly sex and marriage because it's a fun topic. I talk about pretty much anything. I'm about to start going to school in California, so I'm gonna start daily vlogging that. I have plans to go to Ireland over this summer and daily vlog that. Like I'm Catholic and I talk about stuff. Like that's it. That's me.
Awesome. That is exciting. So today's video, we are going to be talking about, obviously, the Synod, the pre-Synod, and all the documents that have come after. Connor, you've been very instrumental in writing some of the post-pre-Synodal meeting documents that have come out. And especially the one that's coming out soon, because the second part is not out yet. Is that correct?
Yeah. So it's the response document to the final response to the final document of the pre-Synod 2018, which is an awful name. But our first section was on liturgy and catechesis, and oh my gosh, what was the third part about? Tradition and devotion. And I think Joe talked about that in his video on New Catholic Generation in this series. And then the second part is going to be hitting 3 social issues. So we're going to talk about war and persecution, we're going to talk about mental health, and we're going to talk about authentic masculinity and femininity in such a way that when the bishops read it, they're able to better understand what Catholic youth understand today. Nice.
This is really exciting. We've been definitely delving into those documents while filming this series in particular. Because I feel like the more resources that we're responding to, the more honest our responses are going to be. So your topic in particular, you wanted to talk about what the difference a bit between teaching versus catechizing in relation to the youth as defined by the original document, which is 16 through 29.
Yeah, so the first thing that we have to do is like, what is the difference between teaching and catechesis? Like we have to define the terms. And according to the General Directory for Catechesis number 105, catechesis is nothing other than the process of transmitting the gospel as the Christian community has received it, understands it, celebrates it, lives it, and communicates it in many ways. So catechesis, a lot of people think about catechesis as like CCD, but that's more of the teaching aspect. Catechesis is the everyday living and the example that people give of what it means to be a Christian. So if you're talking about, you should love everyone and give to the poor, that's teaching. If you actually give to the poor, that's catechesis.
Oh, wow. I've never heard that definition. That makes a lot of sense. Yeah, that really does change the difference because catechetics always sounds so booky and like, just reading and writing and teaching what you're reading and writing and stuff.
Yeah, and I think that's where a lot of people get caught up is we've stopped trying to catechize to youth and we're more about teaching the youth. Like, Ned gave such a great example last week, so I really can't talk about, I don't want this to be Ned 2.0, but, well, I mean, that'd be great because it's Ned, but we are living in a society where people don't know how to relate to the youth in how to teach and catechize. And when they think we need to catechize the youth, they think about, like Ned said, like shoving it down the throat. Like, oh, you're dumb. We're going to force you to be Catholic because our numbers are really bad right now. And it's like, that's never going to work. If you really want to catechize someone. Okay, so when I was in high school, I was in youth group, and it was an okay youth group, but I didn't like it because it didn't meet my spiritual needs, right? And for most Catholics, according to a 2014 poll, Catholics are leaving because 64% of the reason why they leave is because their spiritual needs are not met. And so the question is, what is going on right now that isn't meeting the spiritual needs? And I think that from what I've seen and what I've studied, that the issue is that, okay, so in youth group, right, I had, back to the example, I didn't enjoy it because they just really didn't focus on much and they were like just, oh, Jesus loves you, everything is okay other than that, right? And that kind of idea that we in the response document call Christ the Enabler, like a Christ that is all about, oh, I love you, no matter what you do, I'm going to just love you and you can do whatever. Okay, so the whole idea about Christ loving you no matter what you do is right, but do whatever? No. Christ set out rules for a reason. Like, the 10 Commandments were not abolished when Christ come. Like, Christ loves everyone everyone. Yes, but that still means you can do stupid stuff. And if you sin, Christ is still going to love you, but that doesn't mean he's enabling your behavior. So if you are an alcoholic, let's say, and you're drinking, Christ will still love you, but that doesn't mean he loves your actions. It's like we say all the time, hate the sin, love the sinner, right? And so in this youth group, we're giving this like fluffy Jesus, right? Whereas when I went to college and I started doing Focus, right? Fellowship of Catholic University students absolutely love them. They had a thing called discipleship, and I got into discipleship where it was just one-on-one talking about and growing in my faith with someone, and I loved that more. And it's not just because I'm a nerd Catholic who grew up homeschooled reading the Baltimore Catechism and memorizing it because it was my grade. It was because of the difference between the teaching aspect and the catechesis aspect. Instead of like shoving all this information down my throat or just being like, you should be loving Jesus, why aren't you loving him more with your vape pens and your Tide Pods? Like, it was more about, why aren't you growing in this personal relationship? And I think that's what a lot of teens are missing in modern day catechesis and modern day teaching, is that we aren't teaching first and foremost about loving Jesus. We're talking more about, we're looking at his rules and regulations. Because if you look back to the 80s and 70s and 60s, that's how people got into staying in the church. You take your kid, teach them all the rules. But today, millennials hate rules a little bit. Like, it's no secret. We just don't like when we're constrained. And the other thing we don't like is when somebody just starts BSing us. Like, we can smell when you're messing with us. And so if you take those two things and you put them into a youth group setting trying to do the faith, no wonder 64% of teens are leaving. No wonder 53% of Catholic teens who enter high school don't come out Catholic, or college don't come out Catholic, Because you're putting these two things that teens hate and you're putting them into a barrel and trying to sell it as this happy Christianity without giving a specific reason why they should care, right? And so instead of looking at like, what did we say in the document? It was so good. Hold up, I need to find this. So the final document addresses the varied crises in Christian teaching offering and two important challenges. So first, the pervasive despair among young people. The church presents an unreachable standard out of touch with the world, and the belief that moral teaching can be abandoned so that young people encounter the mission of Christ instead of what they perceive as an impossible moral expectation. So that's the issue, is if you start to go off the other end and try to get people, if anyone here has listened to or used the Alpha program, it's a youth ministry program that's non-denominational. Some bishops have used it. What it does is that it gives you the relationship with Christ, and then because non-denominational, it gives you nothing else. So it gives you the generic Christ the enabler kind of Jesus, right? And by going that far, you're just like, oh, Jesus loves you, that's it. That's what really matters. And yes, that's what really matters. That's the Catholic faith and the Christian faith in general. But there's a reason the Catholic Church is the one true faith, because we have all these different aspects of the faith. And you don't need to learn the aspects of the faith to be a good Christian. But at the same time, we're living in a world where you have to defend it. So you need to learn these aspects. So the real issue isn't these two are issues, but the thing that the pre-Synod document was missing was the third issue, which is a lack of adequate catechesis and clarity of teaching. So like, we might, even people like me who are catechized well, you don't have a really good connection with Jesus. And that's one of the issues. Like, I have an entire video on my channel about like my first Jesus moment, right? It's like when you first meet Jesus personally in the Eucharist oftentimes, then you start to take the faith as your own. So yeah, the first thing we need to do is give teens that catechesis by showing them what it means to be a Christian and convincing them, yeah, this is why you should do it. And not say, oh, with Christianity, everything will be okay, because it won't be. I can't think of a single time in history when Christians weren't persecuted. Like, we've always been persecuted. We're kind of the scapegoat of everything. And because of that, it's not different now. And so what are we going to do about it? Are we going to convince teens, oh, it's all happy-go-lucky, you'll be fine, and they're just going to walk away and be like, yeah, it ain't, I'm fine. I can find happiness somewhere else, I can find happiness in drugs. I can find happiness in females. I can find happiness in Fortnite, Like, you have all these reasons why they shouldn't stay, and you need to convince them to stay. And the reason is not, like Ned said last week, it's not shoving it down their throats. You need to catechize. You need to live out the faith. Show them what it is. Actions speak louder than words. Show them what it means to be a Christian and go from there. If you show them what it means to be a Christian, then follow up with the reasons for the faith. So you combine the two things. You combine what Joe talked about and what Ned talked about. If we have the reasons for the faith on one hand, and we have the close encounter with Christ in the other, and we combine them together, that is what good teaching catechesis combined becomes. We now have someone who is in love with Jesus and isn't going to leave the faith, and we have someone who is on the same thing, evangelized to the point that they have the reasons for why they love the faith. It's like the saying, I think it's C.S. Lewis, like, you can ask me why I'm Catholic, and there's a million reasons, but it all leads back to one thing. The Catholic Church is true. And because of that, like, that sums it all up. That really just sums it all up. The Catholic Church is true. So if that's the case, then we need to be presenting both teaching and catechesis in the same vein. Without that, teens are just, nobody cares. It's another boring religion that has rules like mom and dad.
Absolutely. This reminds me of the beginning of the actual pre-synod document, the final document. It says, in light of this, it is necessary for the church to examine the way in which it thinks about and engages with young people in order to be an effective, relevant, and life-giving guide throughout their lives. Now, when we were planning out our meeting, there was a specific key word, I'm hoping you remember what that keyword was, that I feel like really ties into this and what you've already said. Can you address that a bit?
Yeah, so when you're looking at this, I think the keyword that I said was authenticity. I'm like pretty sure that's what it was, because when in that thing it says that it needs to be a relevant church, and relevance is fine, but relevance is tricky, and I'm about to pull out my inner Joe here, okay? Like, if we're talking about relevance, that doesn't mean we should do everything to try to make the teens like it, right? Like, rock masses. No, thank you. No one asks for an electric guitar and a drum set in mass. You can ask every teen on earth. No one's asking for that. But it's making it more relevant, people will say. But again, we don't want it. If we want a rock mass, we'll go to a concert or we'll go to the Baptist church. What we'd rather do is have a church that is good, true, and beautiful in the way that it's meant to be. Don't try to change the faith to make it like what you think we want. Just make it like we want. Okay, example. This is the weirdest example ever. Look at the difference between Miley Cyrus or Katy Perry and Demi Lovato. Hear me out. I know this is weird. On the one hand, right, you have Miley Cyrus, who is all like, oh, I'm good girl gone bad and all this stuff. And you're like, okay, but is that really her? And then you have Katy Perry as well, who's like, okay, but is that really her? Taylor Swift, where she has this whole attitude and it's like, but is that really who she is as a person? And then you look at Demi Lovato, who's been open about like her alcoholism, who's been open about her bipolar disorder. Like, she is a lot more authentic. And because of that, she's rising in the charts. Because her songs are like, I'm lonely. You know, I'm sorry that, you know, I've hurt you. All this stuff that is super real and authentic. And you're trying, when you talk about relevance, it's talking about a popularity score normally. Because you're not saying relevance to become real, you're saying relevance to become popular. And we said that, this is my favorite line in our entire response document, is like, it's not a Facebook page. The Catholic Church isn't like trying to get as many likes as possible by being modern or trendy. It's the teacher of truth. And the surest way to damage the faith of young people is by promulgating a disingenuous or misguided alteration of the truth in a bid for popularity. We desire the church to be popular as we desire everyone to know the truth. But if we have a choice between popularity and authenticity, we choose authenticity. Because you can be as popular as you want and be fake. Or the church can be as authentic as it wants and rise. And if you think it's not possible, Demi Lovato. I mean, come on. So the church is like Demi Lovato, I guess. Yeah. But her music, again, is not okay for mass.
People never expected. Yeah, right. Not okay for mass, but okay for this example.
Yes. Oh, it's a perfect example. Because if you, okay, the way that I like to think about the church with evangelization is we need to be thinking about the church like a business, right? If the church was a business and we're losing 67% of our customers, we have a problem. We need to look at our marketing. How are we looking at the church? And the way I think about marketing in the church is evangelization. How are we going out and spreading the gospel, the Great Commission, preaching the gospel to the ends of the ages? What are we doing that's wrong that's getting so many people to leave? And I think it's this issue. We aren't being real. It's a bad example now because they shut down, but like Babies R Us a couple years ago, they had a huge change in all of their marketing because they were originally like, oh yeah, we're going to present the perfect family. And all their focus groups were like, yeah, we don't really relate to that. They switched over to like parents having issues, you know, and like struggling through life, skyrocketed because it's that authentic feeling. If you want to market to someone, like one of the first rules is connect with them. And if you can connect with someone It doesn't mean you have to be, oh, I'm different, look at us, ah la la, you know, youth ministers with earrings and tattoos, like, yo guys, I'm a cool youth minister just like you know, raising their hands in prayer, and you see like the old scar tattoo, you know. It's like, no, we want somebody who's authentic. Like, I just want a Catholic leader who is like just gonna tell me how it is. Like, yeah, you're gonna be persecuted for faith. Yeah, it sucks you can't have sex before marriage. Yeah, it sucks you can't do all this stuff, but it's gonna be worth it. Rather than somebody who's like, oh, but don't you know that like this is a sin and you're gonna go to hell if you do it? Like, just talk to me normally like I'm an adult and be real with me. Like, that's the only way we need to do it. And then present the church as like, yo, look at this beautiful artwork we got. Yo, look at this beautiful music. Look at our beautiful tradition. Why wouldn't anyone want that? Like, that is how we're gonna market the faith to teens, is we need to just present it as it is. Don't try to be popular, just be real.
Yeah, so to kind of sum up what you've been talking about, you're talking about like the whole point of the best way to teach and to catechize is to not water down the faith. Like, don't try and pretend the rules don't exist, but don't make it only about the rules. But also to make sure that when you're ministering, whether it's teaching or catechizing, because both are necessary, to make sure that you're doing it with a spirit of authenticity, because young people will see through fakeness in a second.
Yep. That's it. Yeah, that's perfect.
Yeah. So the next part is kind of like we want these videos to not just be us complaining about what's wrong. We also want to offer our opinions and thoughts about ways that the church leaders and ministers can actually get better for young people. So what are some ways that you feel that ministers, whether it's youth ministers or priests or anyone who actually deals with youth on a daily basis, can better teach and catechize in more practical ways?
So this is like my favorite thing to ever talk about, because like I'm going to school for business now and I'm trying to start a company that like makes youth ministry programs better, like just create our own thing, like blow everything else out of the water. Because the way that I see it, right, the way that I can practically see it for a youth minister's perspective is you start off by explaining who Jesus is and be honest, right? Be like, why do you even care? Like, that's the first question, because you know, most teens aren't there because they want to be there. You know, in my high school, you had to do 2 years of religious education. You know, 9th and 10th grade, you had to do it, and then you got confirmed. And then after that, out of my 78 people who got confirmed with me, 2 stayed. Clearly, there was a problem there because nobody had the reason for why they should stay. So first you need to say, why should you care? Explain to the teens in that scenario, why would you want to be Catholic? Why should you? And be honest, and stop with the whole, oh, let's watch a video, and then from the video, talk about it in a small group setting for a few minutes, and then break, and then have people, you know, let's stop with the formality. Let's just bring it back to the old school, casual, let's just talk about the faith. No answer is wrong. Let's just pursue truth together. And in a small group setting, that will work. People will eventually open up. And yeah, you have to train the leaders to be better, and you can't just read off a sheet of questions, but it's going to have a bigger impact. It'll be a little bit harder because you actually have to train people, and here's how you relate to teens. Actually relate, not try to be relatable or try to be relevant, but actually relate to them. And through that, how can you get them to the proper answer without ignoring their point of view? Because there's a reason everyone has a certain point of view. And so you need to accept their point of view, but not agree with it. And you can do that, and so many people say you can't. But if you set up this, and then from that, you start to get them into the why they care, continue with prayer, retreats, leadership, all this stuff, like some of the stuff Ned was talking about last week, and then what Joe was talking about, like give them an engagement into the Eucharist so that they see this is what Jesus did, this is how he loves me, and manipulate them a little bit, and not indoctrinate them, but show them, like, play the best music you can for Mass and for retreats. Do the absolute best you can in relating to someone. We're losing this idea of ministry in youth ministry, and it's become more about youth teaching or youth indoctrination, like you said last week. Like, it needs to be more about ministry, about the one-on-one connection. Like what Focus does with discipleship is so good because it's about that connection. So I think that's what youth ministry needs to start leaning towards, is stop becoming a CCD 2.0 and start becoming a ministry thing. I would love if when someone has a problem, or has a question, they go to their youth minister and ask it. Because that means the youth minister is actually a minister now. They are ministering in the proper way. They become therapists or counselors in the way that when you go to one of these people, you try to seek truth that you do not understand. Like for the cognitive behavioral type of therapy, which is one of the more widely known ones, it's all about taking your false ideas or your ideas that are missing pieces, inserting the missing pieces, you can realize reality. And if youth ministers looked at it like that, like say, okay, so you don't agree with the church's teaching on traditional marriage, well, why? And then just talk to them about it and be like, okay, I understand your opinion. You have a valid opinion. Don't shut them down. But then explain what the church believes. At the very least, they'll know what the church believes. Even if they leave, then they know what the church believes. And that's the seed you planted that will help. And people think, oh, the seed we plant is yelling at them in the indoctrination. No, minister to them, be kind, be real. That's it. So that's for youth ministry. For priests, be more there. Be more authentic. Literally just be there. Because when teens and young adults see a priest, like that's huge. Like the fact that I used to go to a school that had like an abbey with monks walking around, like even the non-Catholic people, the monks, they'd high five with the monks while going to class. Like it was a big deal because they were there and they were present. And they weren't like, oh, a priest is this weird guy, yada, yada, yada. You're there. Same with the bishops. I had the last bishop we had in Richmond, Bishop Di Lorenzo, the man was amazing because at youth conference, he just walk around and like chill with people, He was so real. And that's this thing that a lot of popes have tried to do, but it's hard when you're the pope because everything you do gets skewed by the media, #fake news. Like if you're real and you show up and you're there and you just say, yeah, God loves you, but that doesn't mean, I'm saying your behaviors are okay, but know that God loves you and loving everyone. And then you treat the church like, oh no, it's a theological thing. You're there. And so people see that you are who you are, not the false idea of who you are. And the same idea with youth ministry, it goes back to what is the reality of the situation. But I think there's other than like youth ministers and priests and bishops and all that, there's another part of all this that is overlooked because I feel like a lot of people don't know how to look at it, and it's the family. The catechesis and teaching in the family is such a deficit now because either the parents don't know how to catechize or reach their teens, regardless of the reason. Parents just need to love their teens. And it's so often like, oh, I'm not my teen's friend, so I'm going to be mean to them. But like, in my opinion, like you can be a friend of your teen and love them. Like you don't have to like love them like, oh, no matter what you do, it's okay with me, sweetheart. But like actual love, like the agape love that Lewis talks about, like the full out, I love you no matter what, but at the same time, because I want what's best for you, I'm going to tell sometimes, you stupid. That's what I think parents need to be. Is that you need to start changing from, oh, whatever you do, I'm not going to allow you to do it because my parents would never, or, stuff like that, and complaining about where the teens are, or say, okay, here's where they are, let's show them the truth as well. And it's not just, and this goes back to the whole teaching catechesis, and I'm not telling anyone how to parent, but, okay, a little bit. You can teach all you want, but if you don't catechize, nothing going to happen. Because you can say, oh, you shouldn't do this, and then you're doing that. This whole do what I say, not what I do mentality needs to stop. Because teens are just going to wait until they're 18, go to college, and you're never going to see them again. And they ain't never stepping foot in a church again. Because what you have done is make them hate everything because it became a lie. Because you said, oh, this is something you should do, but then you didn't do it. So clearly, why should I do it if you're not going to do it?
Absolutely, because we don't want anyone in the church to be hypocritical. And that is exactly what it's kind of leading to, where people are more willing to talk about the letter of the law, and then either they don't live it and cause scandal, or they do live it, but they don't explain how to live it so it doesn't look exciting or fun or engaging. But I do appreciate the way that you're talking about almost like doing more of a Socratic method type youth group situation, where it's more conversational based, where they are seeking truth. And honestly, it's better to teach young people to be truth seekers than to be Catholic rule followers.
Yes.
Because Jesus is the capital T truth. So if you're teaching them to seek the truth, you're teaching them to seek Christ automatically.
Exactly, and this is actually an interesting point because I was talking to one of my friends, and he was in England doing some synod work, and he was talking with people in the Diocese of Birmingham, I believe, about, hey, what's the idea of the faith? And they were just listening. And a lot of the issues that people in England have in this diocese, and these were like high schoolers, was that he said they are like living in a post-relativistic state where everyone is like, oh yeah, it's my truth, and I'm not going to argue what your truth is, yada, 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 and everyone's angry because they just want to have a dialogue about, well, what is truth? We're going back to that Pontius Pilate question in our society about what is true. And okay, this is going to surprise people, but I think the main reason of what this is because of technology. We have gotten to a point where you can't hide anything on technology anymore. You know, everybody says, oh, you post a picture, you might not get a job later. You put on a tattoo, never join the military. You know, it's like all these things that you have to be so real or you're going to get called out hard. So unless everything you're posting on social media is actually who you are, in relation to, so like if us, you know, Catholic YouTubers started posting pictures of us partying and drinking or making out, you know, whatever, nobody's going to listen to us. If you're like living this kind of a life that is contrary to church teaching, you're fake. And if you're going to be fake, but you can't hide it anymore. And then people are going to be like, well, clearly it doesn't matter what you're doing and living because it doesn't matter. And so instead, why don't we like go into this idea, and so that's why I feel like America's going to start going into this like post-relativistic state where people are going to be like, no, we're engaging in dialogue, like we want to know what truth is. And if we have a beacon, you know, not to use like the weird saying, but like the light on the hill, you know, if we're not hiding our light under the bushel basket and we're actually like, yo, we have truth. You want to come here? Because we got some good truth that we think is pretty solid. Come over here. We'll engage in a dialogue with you. Not just say, oh, you're gay, you're sinful, you're going to hell, bye. But actually having a dialogue back and forth with people about whatever it is that they believe. Then they're going to A, feel accepted, and B, they're going to want to come into the church because of it. Like, the dialogue is where it gets weird. Like, Paul never convinced anyone to become Catholic or Christian because he just, you know, oh, you guys are living in sin, you're going to go to hell, follow me, or so you won't. No, he walked in, he engaged in a dialogue, and people were converted. Peter spoke, engaging in dialogue with the people, and 5,000 were converted on Pentecost. That is what you need to have, is that dialogue. That's what's really missing.
For sure. Even the woman at the well did the same thing. I mean, she was a known sinner, and she met Christ. She experienced him, and just her testimony of who he was converted her whole town.
I think that's another thing that we're not focusing on enough is that idea of testimony. Like, we have saints who are so relatable today. You know, we have saints for literally every occasion, and most of them started off as sinners, you know, like Augustine, who's considered like one of the greatest people, like he had a kid out of wedlock. Like, you can't get more sinful than that, you know? Like, you have all these saints who are super relatable, but we're not talking about them. Use the testimony of people we have. Stop trying to be like, oh, it's okay, you know, oh my gosh, there's an example in the Alpha program where it's like, oh, crazy Dave going out with his friend, marijuana smoking Joe, and they find a crossroads in their heart where they discover Jesus. It's like, why? Why? We have saints that can say this so much better. Ignatius was about to punch a fool because he said something bad about Mary, and he didn't. Like, that's an actual crossroad that is a lot better, and it's a funnier story. Like, let's actually look at the saints that we have. You know, let's look at every resource we have. Because we're around for 2,000 years. We have a lot of resources. So let's use this testimony that we have of these great people to convince people, yeah, you know what? The church is pretty awesome. Because, I don't know, I think we're pretty cool.
Absolutely, yeah. Now, another thing that we were talking about when we were prepping, we were talking about how to get young people to participate in the church and how to let the church stand for itself. So can you expand on those two ideas?
Oh, yeah. So I talked a little about this already, but the idea of letting the church stand for itself is, look, we have this thing that is so awesome. Why aren't we just showing it as it is? Why are we trying to spice it up or make it more relevant or more trendy? We have a church that's been around for 2,000 years that has survived longer than most governments around today. That's cool in and of itself. We have martyrs. We have, like, the church. I talked about this forever ago. The church is romantic as heck. Like, we are such a cool religion, and nobody talks. Like, it's a fake line by G.K. Chesterton, but I don't even care. Like, the Catholic Church is the sexiest religion. Like, we literally, we make incense a part of our liturgy. Our main sacrament is alcohol. Like, we are a very sensual, very beautiful religion. Like, that gets to the senses. Have you ever been to, like, a midnight mass? Like, holy cow, that's incredible. Because once you walk into that and people, like, playing the trumpets and walking in with candles, you know, for Easter Vigil, holy cow. Like, I try to go to Easter Vigil because I'm entranced by the beauty of it. The church is beautiful. The church has goodness. The church has truth. Let it stand there. Just show the church as it is and show the Catholicism and religion as it is. And stop trying to make it all fancy. Stop trying to be like, oh, we need, guitars, or we need a different way to preach to the youth. No, just say, look, here's what Catholicism is. We're the longest church surviving in all of history. We have a track record that has had a lot of issues, but it has also had a lot of good. The people who had issues weren't really living what we believe. So, yeah, we also have eternal life. We also are really beautiful. And, yeah, we have awesome YouTubers. So, like, what more do you need to convince someone? Like, that's like trying to give someone a chocolate chip cookie with icing and then be like, no, wait, we need to add sprinkles and a creme brulee. No, just give me the cookie. Give me the dang cookie. It's beautiful in and of itself. Enough said.
Yeah. So what are ways, because we've talked a lot about ways that church leaders and church ministers can help the youth. So what are ways that you feel like youth can help themselves by getting more involved in the church, in the whole process of catechizing and teaching, and just actually not just having it be a one-way street of you guys have to do everything for me, but how can we help the church minister to us better?
We're in a rough spot because a lot of church teachers aren't going to listen to us. I have a friend who is in her 30s, has 4 kids. She's working communications and adult ministry at a church. And a lot of people are like, you don't have experience, wait till you're older. I have talked to people who have told me, oh, you shouldn't start a youth ministry business because you don't know enough about how to reach the youth. You need more experience. And it's like, excuse me, but I'm a youth. And I think we just need to be more vocal. And I think that the very last thing that Pope Francis said at the end of the Synod was just be loud, start a conversation, start a dialogue. And that's what our document is doing, is we're trying to start a dialogue about like because this whole Synod is about the church and youth, right? And vocations and all that stuff. So we just need to start a dialogue, and we can't be silent, but we also can't be crazy. And I would say that's the biggest thing is take your truth. And when I say your truth, I mean the way in which you see how people can help us, how the church can help us, and express it. Because they may ignore us, but somebody will listen to us. And when somebody listens to us, then we're good. And besides that, the only other thing I would say, other than being vocal with church leaders, is help a brother and sister out. Like, live in the way that you're supposed to be and encourage others to do it. Accountability helps so many people through so many things. So let's be accountable to each other, and not just accountable in like this formal way, but let's just be brothers and sisters in Christ, aiding each other. Like, take care of your friends and start a daily rosary thing, In college, a bunch of my friends started a thing in our small group where we would pray a rosary every day. And like when we'd like shake hands and we'd be like, you pray? Yeah, I pray. You pray? I pray. And we were accountable to each other, So like, get together and start pursuing the faith together. Because yeah, you can do it yourself, but it's so much more fun and so much deeper and so much more rich when you have a brotherhood around you and a sisterhood around you. Because then you are all connected in this one goal, and there's strength in numbers. There is strength in numbers, and if you all get there to heaven, if you look at any saint, there is a saint who has a friend who's also a saint. Benedict had Scholastica. Francis had Clare. Francis Xavier was friends with, I forget, Ignatius of Loyola, I think. Edit that out if it's wrong. Like, you're never going to see a saint by themselves, except for like Anthony the Great, but that's because he went in the desert and did hermit thing by himself. Most saints are coming in pairs and in groups. So if my number one goal is when I go up to heaven, we're going to have our own little clique. Because it's like, yo, 1997 to 2080 crew, West Coast Catholics right here, let's go, Like, I work Catholic T-shirt club, I work with them, and it's y'all should buy it. It's great, shameless plug. But like, when we all get up there, it's the guy who runs it, Andy, he posts this awesome thing, like, when you get up to heaven, and Jesus is like, yo, how did you live the faith? You're like, I was part of the club, part of the Catholic T-shirt club. Like, let's all join together and that's the number one way that we're going to, like, other than like getting church leaders, that's fine. They may not listen to us, but if we all grow together in faith, connected in a club that we call Catholicism, where we are one, we are holy, we are Catholic, and we are apostolic. We are the greatest, like, we're the greatest subculture of all time. Like, you can take the Trekkies, you can take the Whovians, you can take whatever the name is for Star Wars fans. Feels bad that I don't know it because I am one. but we're Catholic. We're the greatest subculture of all time. Let's band together. Let's be awesome. We'll get to heaven together.
Absolutely.
That's
yeah,
the goal.
And I feel like that really will help a lot of the loneliness that social media has caused.
Yep.
And that really does help young people also directly reflect the Trinity, because God himself is a community. He is a like three persons in one God, and that's like Catholicism was designed around the idea of community. So absolutely, having a communal faith is very, very important and very helpful, I think. And that's something that some other religions don't really emphasize.
Or they emphasize it too much. And like, this is what I love about Catholicism is it solves the cultural issue. Like, we've had so many like big celebrity suicides lately. And according to studies, the two reasons why people commit suicide are they have a lack of belonging, or a feeling of low, like, oh, if I was gone, nobody would care. So if you're in this group of community, A, you belong, and if you leave, you're not being this person doesn't have an accountability partner now. So no matter whether it's based on loneliness from social media or whatever, just the culture, like, by joining together as a group of believers, we're combating one of the biggest evils in our culture.
All right, thank you so much, Connor. This has been awesome. So we're going to go ahead and ask you the same question that we've asked Joe and Ned so far, which is, if you could be there in the room with the bishops during the synod in October, and you had about 30 seconds to talk about what you've been talking about this whole time so far, to represent young people searching authenticity and teaching versus catechizing. If you had like 30 seconds to talk to the bishops, what would you say to them?
I would say, can you give me more time? There's so much. I would just say, we are here. We aren't going away. I would recommend you listen, because we love the church and we want to see it grow. So let us grow our peers into a love of the faith that has never been seen before. Let us rise up and live truly. That's what I'd say.
Beautiful. Awesome. Thank you. So we're going to be linking all of the documents that we've referenced in the description box. Do you want to do like a mini abstract of the document that you guys have already put out, and then the one that's coming out, especially like with the release date? Oh yeah, and the Facebook group, mention that too.
Yes. Oh my gosh, yes. We are not just a bunch of crazy Catholics who are joined together. We actually have a Facebook group. And we're not just, if anybody's watching this who's an American, we're not American. Like, the other admins and me are like from Pakistan, China, and Poland. Like, we're a huge group of, basically, search on the links in the description. Because it's a long name. It's literally the response group, the final document of the pre-synod 2018. We need a new name. But we are basically joining together, and we have written the first section of our document, like I've said, which is on the tradition and the unity and the teaching, yada, yada, yada. Our second section is going to be on more social issues. We're going to be releasing that on next Wednesday, midnight Rome time. So we are going to be putting that out, and then we're going to have a huge document. Spoiler, we might have gotten our documents to some cardinals. Like Cardinal Burke might have our hands on the first part of our document, so that's kind of cool. And yeah, we're just a group of believers. We're opening it up to a lot more people. We're making the group public. If you do try to join, answer the Facebook questions, because we won't accept you if you don't answer the questions. Make sure you read both our document and the original. Give your thoughts. Just come on, join us. We're fun. Read our document, because we haven't had a single person who actually read it who hasn't liked it. So read it. I hope you like it. Somebody did read a little bit, and she got really angry and then blocked all of us on Twitter when we tried to come back at her. It was awkward.
Yeah, well, I mean, Jesus didn't say we would all be friends.
No, I'm sure the apostles fought way too much.
Absolutely. Awesome. So thank you so much, Connor from Rise Up Jerusalem, for joining us for this week's episode of the Synod series. We will link your channel in the description box below. So if you guys can go ahead and give Connor a subscribe, follow thing.
For fun.
Please do.
Kinda. It's a lot of puns.
Awesome. All right, Connor, it's been great, and we will talk later.
Of course. Thank you for having me on, Zyra.
All right. Bye-bye.